326.72, right? The very last verse of the chapter. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalabha Giribharadari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Banachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatikacharya To Tadasata Shri Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam Ki Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Gaur Premanande All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Anmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Bitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavan Eshvari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. All right, so we are today on Canto 3, Chapter 26, Text 72. Tam asmin pratyag atmanam. Tam asmin pratyag atmanam. Diya yoga pravrittya. Diya yoga pravrittya. Bhaktya viraktya jnanena. Bhaktya viraktya jnanena. Vivichityatmani chintayat Vivicyatmani chintayat Tam asmin pratyag atmanam Diya yoga pravrittya Bhaktya viraktya jnanena Vivicyatmani chintayat. Please chant. Tam asmin pratyag atmanam Diha yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat husband atmanam diha yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat tam asmin pratyag atmanam dhiya yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat tasmasmin pratyagatmanam dhiya yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat. Vaishnavis? Tam asmin pratyag atmanam dhiya yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat tam asmin pratyag atmanam dhiya yoga pravrittaya bhaktya virakya jnanena vivichyatmani chintayat tam upon him asmin in this pratyag atmanam the super soul dhiha with the mind yoga pravrittaya engaged in devotional service bhaktya through devotion viraktya through detachment jnanena through spiritual knowledge vivichya considering carefully atmani in the body chintayat one should contemplate. So the translation reads, therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. So we can read this call and response. Therefore, through devotion, detachment and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate that super soul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. Oh, here's Prabhupada's purport. One can realize the super soul within oneself. He is within one's body, but apart from the body, or transcendental to the body. Although sitting in the same body as the individual soul, the super soul has no affection for the body, whereas the individual soul does. One has to detach himself, therefore, from the material body by discharging devotional service. It is clearly mentioned here, bhaktya, that one has to execute devotional service to the Supreme. As it is stated in first canto, second chapter of Shrimad Bhagavatam 1.2.7, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha. When Vasudeva, the all-pervading Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is served in complete devotion, completely pure devotion, detachment from the material world immediately begins. The purpose of Sankhya is to detach oneself from material contamination. This can be achieved simply by devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one is detached from attraction of material prosperity, one can actually concentrate his mind on the Supersoul. As long as the mind is distracted towards the material, there is no possibility of concentrating one's mind and intelligence upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his partial representation, Supersoul. In other words, one cannot concentrate one's mind and energy on the Supreme unless one is detached from the material world. Following detachment from the material world, one can actually attain transcendental knowledge of the absolute truth. As long as one is entangled in sense enjoyment or material enjoyment, it is not possible to understand the absolute truth. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:54. One who is freed from material contamination is joyful and can enter into devotional service. And by devotional service, he can be liberated. In Shrimad Bhagavatam, first canto, it is stated that one becomes joyful by discharging devotional service. In that joyful attitude, one can understand the science of God or Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it is not possible. The analytical study of the elements of material nature and the concentration of the mind upon the Supersoul are the sum and substance of the Sankhya philosophy system. The perfection of this Sankhya Yoga culminates in devotional service unto the absolute truth. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the third canto, 26th chapter of the Shrimad Bhagavatam, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. Tam asmin pratyagatmanam diya yoga pravartaya bhaktya viraktya jnanena vivichatmani chintayet. Therefore, through devotion, detachment, and advancement in spiritual knowledge, acquired through concentrated devotional service, one should contemplate the Supersoul as present in this very body, although simultaneously apart from it. So, this verse is a little convoluted in its wording, but basically it's saying that devotion prepares one for being able to contemplate the Supersoul within one's own body. So it was a very interesting class our Braj Mohan gave yesterday. I really liked it a lot. So many different topics came up. It was a lot of different things, from deity worship to moving deities to the nature of the demigods and how they enter in, how to worship the demigods, and different kinds of intuition. It was kind of all over the place, all kinds of interesting things there. So if you didn't see it, go watch it on YouTube. It was it's there. But this is a common theme in Bhagavad Gita and in Bhagavatam, we have these ideas of knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service. As Prabhupada quotes, this verse, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janiyatyasu Vairagyam Jnana Chadyad Ahoitukam. That by rendering devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one automatically acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the material world. So by performing devotional service, one acquires causeless knowledge and detachment. But what's kind of interesting is unless you have knowledge in the first place, you aren't going to be doing devotional service. And unless you're a little bit detached, devotional service will seem off-putting to you. You won't engage in it. So it's kind of like you need all three of them at the same time. And without knowledge, you won't do devotional service. And without detachment, devotional service won't be attractive to you. So even if you stumble upon it some kind of way, you just will move on. But once we perform devotional service, we will acquire knowledge and detachment. Knowledge is not something that we download like a text file from some URL somewhere on the great World Wide Web of modern fame. And it's something that's already there. In fact, knowledge is our innate situation. We are Sat Chit Ananda, so we already have knowledge. Why don't we use it? Why can't we access it? It's because it is obscured. It's obscured by our material desires. That's why, we Bhogashvarya Prasaktanam, so that for one who is, too much attached to material enjoyment and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. For one who is too much attached to material enjoyment and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. 244, by the way. So this is the trick, that everything is very simple, but it might as well be a million miles away. It might as well be like rocket science, because we have vested interests and we are attached to the material body and to our material thinking. Yesterday, when I was giving class, the Gita from Zero class, I suddenly remembered a game that I used to play when I was a kid. There was a game that was called Life. And I looked it up on the internet today just to refresh my memory. It was indeed given by Milton Bradley. Milton Bradley were the company that produced Life. And you had this little path that you went along, and there was a spinner in the middle, and the spinner would tell you how many spaces to move ahead. And it was supposed to mirror life, and you had these little plastic cars that were convertible so that, you could put pegs in them. There were 6 holes in there, and you had like pink pegs and blue pegs. So obviously, I don't know if they've updated it now with pink and blue pegs or whatever, but at any rate, you have these pegs. You could put them in there, and you came out where you started, and then you could either go to college or not. There was a divergent path, and if you went to college, you got more money every time that you got a payday. and you could buy insurance. And then there was marriage, and you got, a wife or a husband, and then you went on beyond that. Then you got kids, and if you had kids, you got extra points, and you had this money, and you could buy property. And at the very end was the poor farm and millionaire acres. So this was the goal of life. You didn't want to wind up in the poor farm. You wanted to wind up at millionaire acres. And that meant that you had a chance of winning the game. And of course, you would be compared to the other players to see how many kids they had and how much money they had amassed, and such things. I read that there's a new updated version of it where you get points for doing ecological things and for giving to the poor. So now that's also woven into the game, which wasn't there when I was a kid. So this was, and I'm thinking as I go over this concept, this was supposed to be for kids kind of a learning what life is all about. Of course, there was another important part of it, and that was this square that you could land on. It was called revenge. And when you landed on revenge, you could take money from some other player. It was now it's called filing suit. So that, in other words, now it has legal implications. So this was all part of this game, and little plastic car with little plastic pink and blue pegs, and little money. There were, $500 bills, $1,000 bills, $10,000 bills, and $20,000 bills. Of course, in real life, none of those bills exist. There's only $100 bills. That's as big as it gets in U.S. currency. But how much is the real life just like this? You have pegs. At the end, you either wind up in the poor farm or in millionaire acres. You have some kids in a car, and you either did well or you didn't. And it's just a game. And at the time of death, when the kids get finished, you get hungry or whatever it is, and mom says it's time to eat something, so everybody leaves the game and you put it away. But that's exactly what death is like. You put the game away. Of course, in this game of life, there's no transcendental goals. There's no get a Bhagavatam from a devotee on the street. That isn't one of the squares you can land on, but instead you just wind up either in the poor farm or in millionaire acres. And after finishing, you could have 100 of these games, and it's the same thing in real life, that when you die, it's all taken away. You put the money away, you put the pegs away, you start a new game or you play some other game. And it's just exactly like that. And of course, there's a spinner, so you have chance. Maybe you got good things, or maybe you didn't get such good things because of the spinner. And this is the nature of the material world. Yet we take it so seriously. But why? Because we have, for many lifetimes, cultivated a certain mentality of certain material desires and certain habits or tendencies. And these are all, of course, material habits and material tendencies, because we don't know nothing about Krishna. We don't care anything about Krishna or devotional service. So we go through lifetime after lifetime. We have friends, family members, we get married or we don't, or whatever it is. And we never think about Krishna. So we have developed over many lifetimes these long, strong bonds to bad habits. And like this game of life, we decide we're going to go to college, or we decide we're not going to go to college. We decide we get married, or we decide we're not going to get married, or whatever it is, you know. So we have all these choices. And there are reactions or repercussions from these choices, but they're all material reactions and material repercussions. And at the end of life, they just all get cashed in. Everything just disappears. And death will prove it to us. If you sometime just imagine what death will be like, you know, you're in a body now, but you'll just start to rise up above the body, and you will never go back into that body again. You will just be rising up out of it. You will never be called by that name again. You will realize that what you tried to, as a devotee, grasp, that you are not the body because it's no longer part of you. You are going out of it. And it's a very different experience, because consciousness is not the body, but we identify with the body. We identify with the body because we've identified with our material desires. As long as we identify with our material desires, Bhogashvarya Prasaktanam, as long as we identify with them, we cannot understand the supersoul. We cannot understand spiritual life. We cannot detach ourselves from the body because we think we are the body. Someone can tell us, we can even hear that, we can even believe it, but we don't experience it. That's the difference. You know, we can believe it even, but we don't experience it. Not until we realize that the actual material desires that we have dragged through many lifetimes are absolutely pointless, and we gradually give them up. Through devotional service, we will gradually give them up, but it will take some time. And when we get to the stage where we're no longer really interested in playing the game of life anymore, but we're interested in playing the game of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, at that point, we have, actually won the game. So, you know, that's the point where the lights go off like a pinball, you know, bing, 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 bing. You've won the game. You have now realized that you are not the material body. And the supersoul becomes visible. And you begin to be able to interact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What's also interesting in this particular section of Shrimad Bhagavatam is this similarity between the human body, which of course has the supersoul, the subtle body, and the individual soul. So we learn about that in Bhagavad Gita. There are two birds sitting on the tree, you know, the individual soul and the super soul, which Prabhupada alludes to in this purport. The individual soul is the eating bird, the one that's trying to enjoy those material desires that we have cultivated through many lives. And there's the witnessing bird, the supersoul, who is not interested and not attached to the body. He's simply looking at the eating bird and wondering when the eating bird is going to turn his face towards the supersoul, the actual transcendental bird. So when we die in one lifetime, we have these patterns, these ideas, and karma, and we wind up in a new body somewhere else. That body is given to us as a result of the sum total of karma that we have amassed through one lifetime. And then long about adolescence, the supersoul reminds us of what we wanted in our previous life. And we suddenly awaken to something, we think, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do. People, I'm going to join the army, or I'm going to, as I was saying last night, be a death metal rocker. I'm going to get a guitar and turn up the amp, or I'm going to, travel the world on the merchant marine. People get all these kinds of ideas that these things are the sudden bubbling up from down below of previous tendencies and desires that were not quite fulfilled in the previous lives. They suddenly bubble up, and we take them very seriously. And for people who have not been associated with devotees, there's no reason not to take them seriously. There's nothing else. There's no option. There's no other thing, and that's why everybody is so serious. You see them every morning getting their coffee and donuts as they, get into the subway over here or wherever you are. The other morning I came back from Freeport, and I saw the whole morning rush of people on the LIRR, all these people getting ready to go to work, with their little suitcases or folders or whatever it was, flying in from somewhere out there in Long Island into Manhattan to go to some, office there and do their day's worth of work. So they're serious. They're playing the game of life. They've got their car, and they've got their 2 or 3 kids or whatever it is, and they've got their, most of them, at least the ones that are on the LIRR, most of them are ones that went to college, so they took that path. And they are totally unaware of the super soul, because when a person is attached to all those things, one must identify with the body, and one cannot experience the super soul or anything like it. So this is a very important thing to meditate on, that through devotional service we will gradually become more and more detached. So through devotional service, we will get causeless knowledge and detachment. That's what we want. And that will gradually occur. But we can help it along if we meditate on the super soul and we try to think, how seriously am I taking my desires from my past life? What were they? What are they? How long will I take them seriously? And how will I gradually recognize that these are just like any other game, like Monopoly or chess or checkers or some other game like that. These are just board games, and they have no reality. What's another interesting thing that we found out here is Burijan mentions in unveiling his lotus feet that just as in our body we have the individual soul, we have the subtle body, and we have the gross body. He says that the universe is set up the same way. It's like a fractal. So our little body is like a microcosm of the macrocosm. So the macrocosm is the whole universe, the big machine, and we are in a small machine, the body that we're in. The body that we're in has a subtle body, and it has a soul, our individual soul, and it has the gross body. So the material nature, the cosmos, is the gross body, and he says that the Virat Purush, or the Virat Ru, is the subtle body of the material world, the whole material world. And of course, the super soul is the soul of the material world. So he makes that analogy. I thought that was very interesting. I'd never heard that before, but that's there in the section that we're reading. So the process of Krishna consciousness is just becoming unstuck, becoming detached, popped out of the material body. There used to be an analogy that devotees would use all the time that I never hear anybody say anymore, that if you take a coconut and it's not a very ripe coconut, and you listen to it, you can shake it, you might be able to hear the coconut liquid slosh around inside. But if you let it dry for a long, long time, eventually the internal meat of the coconut will pull away and you can hear it rattle. So that is an analogy used for us detaching ourselves from the body, like the internal pulp of the coconut finally drying to the point where it pulls away by shrinking from the outside hard coconut shell, which is, of course, inedible. So we can do like that. And the way we're caught in the material world is the way that there's another analogy, the monkey trap. So evidently, there's a way to catch monkeys, and the way that one does that is, again, one gets a coconut, and in the coconut, one drills 2 holes. In one hole, there is a wire, and that wire is attached to a tree so that the coconut can't be taken away from the tree. On the inside of the coconut, they drill a hole, and they put a sweet, but it's not a soft sweet, it's like rock candy, so it can't be crushed. And they make a hole in the coconut just big enough that the monkey can reach his hand in and grab the rock candy. But with his hand on the rock candy, he can't pull his hand out because it's too big. The hand around the piece of sugar is too big. So the monkey then sees people coming to get him, but he won't let go of the sweet because he knows it's in there. If he just let go of it, he could get away, but he won't let go of it. So this is how we are trapped by the material nature. We want to enjoy that sweet. And actually, I saw something very similar to this one time when I was living in New Zealand. We stayed in an area of Auckland that was called Balmoral, and we had a house there, and there was a bunch of us living there, and we were making these sesame sweet balls to give out on Sankirtan, and there were rats in the bottom of the house. And one of the devotees thought that he wanted to be benevolent to the rats, so he would feed them. And one time we had a whole bowl of these sweet balls in the back of the room. And I came in there and there was a big rat, and he had grabbed one of those sweet balls. And it was one of those sesame sweet balls. And he saw me, and he knew that he had to get out of there. So he ran to the door, and he could fit underneath the bottom of the door, but the sweet ball wouldn't. And so he tried, 2 or 3 times to pull the sweet ball through the bottom of the door, but you could almost hear the little squeak of exasperation when he had to let the sweet ball go, because he knew that he would be caught if he didn't let it go. But it was, he really didn't want to let go of Sweet ball. So this is our nature of the our attraction or our attachment to the material world. You know, we are trapped by our material desires. But if we continue with devotional service, we keep reminding ourselves of what the real goal is to serve Krishna and how we're serving Krishna right now, how we can try to become actually grateful and positive towards Krishna. If we do that, then we will start to feel the joy of devotional service. And we will start to recognize that so many things don't matter. And we'll put away the board game of life, we'll put away all that stuff, and we will begin to perceive the Supersoul directly, which Prabhupada also quotes that verse from chapter 1854, you know, that verse about, you know, the Supersoul is already reached, you know. So I want to stop and leave time for at least a few questions. Do we have the microphone? It's all queued up and ready to go.
Haribo, Hare Krishna. Somebody has a question?
Thank you so much for the nice class, Maharaj. I was just wondering, it's a very sobering thought about this game of life, and I was just thinking, if we don't have like any kind of desire or something, meaning like how can we live even?
How can we do it?
How can we live? Like where we should attach ourselves to.
Right, right.
But in devotional service, we actually can engage all our desires in devotional service. Would it be the same even if I wanted it in the last life? Would it be the same result if this desire engaged in devotional service?
Would it be the same result of what?
For example, if, you know, like you were saying, we all have desires from previous lifetimes, and we all trying to, you know, fulfill them in this lifetime. But if we engage them in devotional service, then is it okay?
I'm not sure I can understand your question, but you're asking what happens if we have these desires from the past life and we don't fulfill them. What will happen about the devotional service, or?
No, if I'm just thinking where to attach the mind if it's not to a desire.
Where to attach the mind?
Yeah, where to attach the mind, because we have to think about something. We have to desire something.
Right, right. So as Prabhupada says, desire is the nature of the living entity, you know, and we also know that one cannot be free from desire. The question is what desires we have. So we have to learn how to transfer our desires from our material previous samskaras, what we brought from previous lives, to wanting to please Krishna in various ways. So we can try, you know, again, you will make more and quicker progress in Krishna consciousness if you understand what you're doing and you try to actually do it, as opposed to just knocking around in Krishna consciousness doing all the defaults, you know. So you'll also make progress that way, but it'll be slower. So if you recognize that, well, I know that I'm theoretically a servant of the Supreme Lord, and I should do everything for the Supreme Lord's pleasure. So let me actually think like that, you know, what would Krishna like the most, you know, how could I do this for Krishna, even as we were talking about the other day, you know, having a dialogue with Krishna, you know, thinking Krishna, you know, and, you know, what am I supposed to do? How is that supposed to work? What are you trying to tell me? You know, all these kind of things. And little by little, you are starting to reconnect to the real source of everything. And as you develop a personal relationship with Krishna, you will develop personal desires to please Krishna in certain ways. And this is all very natural, and this is what supplants all that stuff that we've carried for many lifetimes. Was that your question? Okay.
Hare Krishna. So once one gets to the point of purifying all of their desires, does one immediately transfer into a new body?
What?
Does one transfer into a new body? Like, okay, so you perfect your life and you purify the desires that you've had from all your previous lives. Is it that at that point that your spiritual body is ready for you to enter into, or can you just exist in the pure state?
Well, what we find is that we are the soul, or consciousness. That's another thing that we were hearing about in the last few verses that we came through. You know, Braj Mohan did a nice explanation of how, you know, until the super soul came in, the cosmic egg, the Hiran Maya, didn't rise, you know, but then it did. So the soul is what gives life to everything, but the soul is not the body. It's not the subtle body. It's not the false ego. And this is what we were hearing from these verses, just as this is like a big metaphor that the legs didn't cause it to stand. The Hiranmaya didn't stand when the energy of the legs was there, nor when the energy of the mouth was there, nor even the mind was there, nor even the the energy of the arms or the oceans entering into the abdomen. And none of that made the cosmic, being arise, but what did was the super soul. So when we get to the soul, we know that the soul in the body is analogous to that. We're not the legs, we're not the abdomen, we're not the desires. What we are is the actual soul, the jiva. And when we come to that point, we realize that this whole environment that we're in, the body, the world, our name, our reputation, our history, all that is not us. None of it is us. What's us is the fact that we're trying to serve Krishna. And so the more we stay with just the activity of trying to reconnect our mind constantly and reconnect our activities constantly on trying to serve Krishna, the more we will become aware that just like having an avatar in one of these modern computer games, you know, people play these computer games, and you get some kind of an avatar, and you push buttons, and you move around, and you identify with that, and you're watching a computer screen, but it's not you, even if it gets blown up or whatever it is, it's not you. And you'll realize that this three-dimensional thing is exactly the same thing, that we identify with it, but we're not it. And what it wants is not what we really want. It's something else. And that its desires, its false ego, its false plans, all these things are what we are not, you know. And this is at first just something we intellectually hear and try to grasp, but eventually it becomes vigyan, realized knowledge, as we act on it more and more as time goes on. And we begin to actually find that many of the things that we once held very tightly are no longer as, monumentally important to us as they once were. And it does occur like that. So, Jnaniyat Aishu Vairagyam Jnana Chadayad Ahoitakam. So we get causeless knowledge and detachment.
Thank you. I guess more specifically, I'm wondering, like, once you reach prema, then you just transcend, or could you stick around if it's Krishna's arrangement, or how does that work?
Well, when you get to that stage, then you're totally in the level of interacting with Krishna and whatever he wants you to do. You know, when you're at that level, Krishna never gives us a boring situation. There's always something going on, you know. We can be, you know, excruciating in Krishna consciousness, or we can be frustrated in Krishna consciousness, we can be frightened in Krishna consciousness, but bored we will never be. So, you know, the idea is that he keeps things going on, and some cases he might want us to come back home, back to Godhead. In some cases he might want us to stay for some purpose that he has going on here. And at that point, we will be aware enough of Krishna to know what it is that he's actually indicating for us at that time. So, you know, that's, as they say in the Bible, where not through a glass darkly, but then face to face, you know. So that's what that strange biblical, you know, passage is all about, you know. We won't see through a glass darkly, but rather face to face. So right now we're seeing through a glass darkly. Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the class. I was wondering if on this topic you could say something about chanting. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's just very quiet. Chanting. Could you say something about chanting and how it is that we can? What is the proper attitude to connect with our chanting on the level of a person instead of having our chanting be more impersonal? Even if we're focused and concentrated, can it be that we're focused and concentrated, but our chanting is still impersonal? Can you explain that?
Well, I think in the beginning, we just want to try to connect to the sound. As you connect to the sound properly, all the other stuff starts to become added in, or it begins to unfold the way a seed grows into a plant, you know. So we find that the scriptures like the Harinam Chintamani and others like that describe that from Nam comes Rup, then comes Gun, then comes Leela. So there's an unfolding process. In the beginning, we just have the name, and we're just trying to hear the name as opposed to mentally do something that's preempting the name. You know, we generally find that we're chanting, but something else is going on upstairs. You know, the mouth may be moving, but the mind is doing something else. That's what we're trying to avoid. And by focusing on the name, that may seem somewhat impersonal because we're just trying to hear. But eventually, if we do that, that is the proper channel through which we will come to experience the form, Rup, and then subsequent to that, the guna, the actual qualities of the Supreme Lord, become manifest. And finally, we'll enter into the Leela of the Supreme Lord. So these are progressively more involved as the purification is experienced, as we actually come to the stage of deeper purification. Does that make sense? It's very hard to stay focused on just the sound vibration because it's like looking for the super soul. You are trying just to make bare consciousness on what's going on in the sound channel, what's auditory going on. You're just trying to be simply and uncomplicatedly aware of the sound with no interaction, with no, no kind of further development into some other kind of mental process. So this is difficult for all of us, but I'm finding that as I'm getting older, it's easier to do than it once was, but still it's a fight. every day. Any other final questions or comments? We should probably break off here because we're 5 over. Okay, so thank you all very much for your kind attention. All glories to Shrimad Bhagavatam, all glories to the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna.